Welcome back to the history of propaganda, and for the second volume. Excuse me, get myself comfortable here. Obviously, I have some critics who are like, "Oh, I'm disrespectful of women," and so on and so forth. But they're allowed their opinions, and I know that I'm going to lose some friends by voicing my opinions and my observations, because a lot of people don't like the truth. And a lot of people don't like being told or being confronted with the fact that they've been taken by this pervasiveness, by the pervasiveness and the onslaught and aggressiveness of the programming. Now you see, this is again what has to do with the weaponization of art, predictive programming, neurolinguistic programming, the power of suggestion, and so on and so forth. Because we're not as, independent and free-willed as we think we are as far as the biological body is concerned. It takes discipline, logic, and deduction. Then I recently cited, Kant's moral reasoning. And, I'm very well versed, but not recently. I would have to reread all of these volumes. And that's a lot of work of philosophy and of thought from different eras, primarily men, to be honest with you. Which what can I say? That's history. There are female philosophers, but they're few and far between. Let's see. I'll look this up just on a tangent. Philosophers who are women, female philosophers, whatever, okay? Okay, so yeah, Wollstonecraft, yes, I remember her. That name is familiar. The first results here are Hypatia, 415 AD. Mary Wollstonecraft, Anne Conway, Hannah Arendt, Iris Murdoch, Emmy Waithe. So there's more than enough. There's at least 3 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 times 3, so 16, that's 32, then plus another 13. So about 45, 46 different female philosophers through history. Whatever. Anyways, all of them intelligent in their own right, but obviously I'm not well versed enough to give any of my opinions on them. And since this is Women's History Month, and where it's due, how many people actually know that there's female philosophers. Now, what I did yesterday in response to Trudeau, I'm so proud of this drawing. Honestly, I love this. And then there's other stuff in my sketchbook which I don't show anybody, like this. I'm a unicorn. Okay, because like Trudeau, and if I was to be a feminist, it would be considered a TERF, a trans exclusionary radical feminist, because as I've said in other videos, gay people, trans people, they don't want to be idolized. They don't want to be made into these into these things, these objects of manipulation. They just want to live their lives without being disturbed, as would anybody else. You see that? Isn't that hilarious? That's fucking Justin Trudeau with Jagmeet Singh as his lapdog, and he's dressed as the communist dictator. Oopsie, there goes my freaking high school diploma. That's hilarious. Oh yeah, and I forgot that's where my other Ontario Scholar thing is, because I have two of them for different years. That was interesting. Anyways, great. And since that falls off, I'm gonna just reiterate. Say if I was superstitious, hate the sin, not the sinner, from my religious standpoint. Yeah, but anyways, yeah, he's dressed like the communist dictator Xi Jinping, and you see the symbolism there. Like this is supposed to be one of the thrones in the Senate, and that's a mushroom, right? And it's very very evocative of Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon is well known and documented in history for his sadomasochistic desires and his gay activities. Absolute homosexual. But as I've said before, I can't do nothing about you wanting to live that life. It's difficult enough, and I would wish that on no one. It's just anyways, there's other this video is going to be about the anti-motherhood aspect of modern philosophy or modern feminist philosophy, and because that's exacerbated by turbo lesbians and these sneaker fuckers that I would say we call them trans people, but a lot of them are predators. They're men dressed up as or pretending to be feminists, and they're not. And it's just like they're infiltrators. It's just like how people it says in the Bible to beware of those who say they are Jews and are not, or beware of those who say they are Christian and they are not, etc. Beware of those who say they are Muslim and they're not. A person's character is dictated by their actions. Now, when it comes to womanhood, okay, so since I'm going to sit here and I'm going to mansplain this to you, I'm going to go by personal accounts here and observations, a little more scientific. My first complaint is, of course, the change from the DSM-4 to the DSM-5. And that's really when things started going off the rails. Okay, so elimination of the multi-axis system, DSM-4 approach psychiatric assessments in organizations of psychosocial information using a multi-axis formulation. There were 5 axes. So the 5 axes, dissociative identity disorder, but switching, not observing. Okay, so this is DID. So this is comparison. This is off of recoveryanswers.org. Notable changes between. Oh, come on. I'll just use the NIH one. This is DSM-5 changes, implications for child, serious emotional disturbances. So this is from second chapter, elimination of multi-axis system and GAF score, and then disorder reclassification. And this was done, when's the date? Is it names and dates? Names and dates. If you're going to document something, names and dates. Names and dates. Names, dates, and places. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. So 5 W's and the H. That's always the inquiry. So when it comes to an investigation, I remember watching a lot of law shows and medical shows growing up. So that's as much, and then also having, I have some first aid training multiple times through St. John's Ambulance. So I know CPR, I know Heimlich, I know basic like how to stabilize someone, and I know how to, now I know just from watching YouTube how to do basic suturing, and honestly I don't want to do it. I don't know how to do injections or IVs or anything like that, but if I had to, I would. Okay. Okay. I don't like this description. This is okay. We'll click on that. Okay. One of the key changes, again, this is from NIH.gov. The key changes from DSM-4 to DSM-5 is the elimination of the multi-axis system. DSM-4 approach psychiatric assessments and organization of psychosocial information using a multi-axial formulation. There were 5 different axes. Axis 1 consisted of mental health and substance use disorders. Axis 2 was reserved for personality disorders and mental retardation. Axis 3 was used for coding general medical conditions. Axis 4 was to note psychosocial and environmental problems, e.g. housing and employment. Axis 5 was an assessment of overall functioning known as the GAF. The GAF scale was dropped from DSM-5 because of its conceptual lack of clarity, including symptoms, suicide risk, disabilities in descriptors, and questionable psychometric properties. So that's from the APA 2013. Although the impact of removing the overall multi-axis structured DSM-5 is unknown, there is concern among clinicians that eliminating the structured approach for gathering and organizing clinical assessment data will hinder clinical practice. However, the direct impact of the prevalence rate of childhood mental disorders is likely to be negligible, as it will not affect the characteristics of diagnoses. This is it. You don't let politics get in the way of the scientific method. Absolutely not. Observe and report. Observe and record. Right? So you get the statistics as to see a pattern. That's the whole point of it. Because once you have the pattern of behavior through observation, then you can make an actual diagnosis. And when it comes, again, me being, an amateur doctor, okay, I don't have a license. I just have the internet. And questions from a lot of practitioners when I go to see them, as a curious and inquisitive person. And also from my observances and firsthand experiences with people who've had, a massive variety of traumas from childhood all the way through like homelessness and PTSD, burnout, and drug abuse, suicidal behaviors, depression, bipolarism, schizophrenia, autism, I myself having my own minor issues in comparison, like social anxieties and seasonal affective disorder, not diagnosed, again, armchair, just through observation. And of course, I've recently experienced burnout, and I've had panic attacks because of COVID. But these things are something that can be dealt with, and they can. And if you're with a good clinician, you can do it without. This is my opinion. Just ask your doctor about this. That you can do it without medication. I'm a firm believer of behavioral modification as the best way to deal with your problems. And, I've done things, amazing things myself, trying to figure out and empathize with people that have substance abuse, issues, or we're, orphans, and, we're experiencing dissociative disorders, or, because that's really the root of it. We think about, or that's what, transgenderism used to be classified as. It used to be classified as a dissociative body dysmorphia. And that's body dysmorphia falls in line with like suicidal ideation. That's a ideation. That's a word I was reminded of recently. Let's see what else. And then basically any kind of conflict, because there's a PTSD element to transgenderism. Because your behavior changes in response to physical assault. I know this personally, not the transgenderism, but the questioning and so on and so forth that happens to go with it, from being touched without consent. So it's to be expected. When you continue to play the victim, then you don't move on from your issues. But what do I know, right? My traumas are mine. They're not yours. Yours are different. So on and so forth. All right. So what really gets me? Okay. So back to the original parts of what I really wanted to do to talk about this, and correlate it back to previous videos with the medical industrial complex, and drug culture, and then also intersectional turbo lesbian feminism. That removes women from the household and puts them into the workforce, as it wasn't turbo before, turbo feminism, let's call it like that. It wasn't like that before. It was just a side effect and a matter of fact after the Second World War, but it was used as a means of increasing productivity and decreasing the labor costs, because naturally the corporations weren't paying women as much because they weren't in skilled labor. There were a lot of office jobs and so on and so forth. Women didn't really get into. They just, after the Second World War, there's this propaganda of, Rosie the Riveter, and I'm gonna tear apart, a lot of my my women mechanics by saying this, but as good as you are, a lot of you are better than me, for different tasks. Everybody has their strengths, but in my opinion, a woman's place is at home. I'm going to be a traditionalist here. Going along with this, because what's the old school mentality is that, a woman makes the house, right? A man provides the house and the woman makes it a home, right? Because otherwise a man doesn't have anything to go home to, and it's just absolutely depressing. The old ways was like that. A woman was again the queen of the social life and of the connections within the community. The grassroots organizers, and this is more or less what started the civil rights movement, was women, and the same guys as it was during the suffragette period, where men were at work and men have these fraternities where we would meet, and women would have these societies, and they would sit around and have tea time and talk about their children and things that they wanted to change in the community and so forth. I hate being interrupted. Okay. so that used to be the old organization of the society, and preordained by marriage, which was the basis of society. So that there wasn't conflicts and there was some equality and equity in not just in the eyes of society, but also within the eyes of the law, right? Equal footing. And women weren't property, and the way it works as it has gone, after this change, this postmodern idealization of subjectivity, and the propaganda of supporting gay rights to the point of completely ruining society. I forgive them because they didn't know what they were doing, but I won't forgive the ones that knew exactly what they were doing by using the control mechanisms of social engineering and eugenics. This is unforgivable. We won't forget it. History won't forget it either. They will not. All the writers, we will not forget. Anyways, so specifically, I want to get on, go back to what I was saying at the beginning, which before I go on these tangents and personal experiences of, of birth control, the anti-womanhood propaganda, which again is associated with getting women into the workforce, increasing productivity, increasing profits, decreasing overall cost, taking advantage of the education difference and vulnerability and openness and so on and so forth, the psychological principles, because obviously there were psychologists that were involved in these decisions and some evil people. Anyways, this is from Reddit, and I usually don't read things from Reddit because it's more of a leftist stronghold, and I'm not a leftist. I'm more somewhere else on the compass. Okay, so first off, I'm not a fan of birth control. I'm really not. I say this from a personal bias in the fact that I've always wanted children in the back of my head. And it would have been, have kids and then figure out everything else afterwards, like whatever, right? Life is life. You can't always plan for these things. You just gotta go for it sometimes. Okay, so, and this one has to do with antidepressants and birth control. And the tagline is, antidepressants and birth control almost ruined my marriage. Okay, and this is what she says. This was posted 8 months ago. So today is March 9th, 2023. And I'll read this now. I'm not exactly sure where to post this, but since it involves my marriage, I think here is a good fit. I'm petite, female, 4'11", and at the time, a few years ago, I was 98 pounds. When I got with my now husband, I started birth control, and we were not ready for kids. First the pill, and I got every symptom in the book, including the hormone change and behavior. Mood swings were not good at all. He managed to convince me to drop the pills. Next, I tried the depot shot. Nope, my emotions were even worse. I was irritated, pissed off, and his breathing bothered me. Once again, he told me, he told me he was on the verge of leaving me. I don't blame him. I was horrid. So after that, I stopped trying to get on birth control. We just used the pull-out method. Yes, I know it's not 100%. A few years later, after we had a child together, I decided to get back on antidepressants. I was going through a very bad time, mental health-wise. I figured it would help. For 6 months, I was on those pills. From getting suicidal thoughts daily, massive mood swings, I became a massive bitch. It all came to a head one night. Me and my husband had a huge row. We fought for hours. Once again, my husband reached his breaking point. Next night, he sat me down and told me that if I don't stop my medication, he would leave me and fight me for custody of our son. He told me how much the medication has changed me. He told me how much I was hurting the family. I didn't see it at the time, but I immediately agreed that night and threw away the pills. I actually get my own theme song about getting very bad reactions to medication that's supposed to help, but it didn't. It took us years to rebuild our relationship after that. It took a very long time to rebuild my kids' trust. I put in a lot of hard work, and my husband put in the hard work too. I'm not exactly sure why I wanted to share this, but maybe someone out there is going through what I went through, and maybe this story could help. Just know that it can get better if both parties put the work in to reach a common goal. Okay. Let's view the entire discussion. And I'm not gonna read the other people's reactions because people have some uneducated opinions and they like to. It's the internet. People like to voice their ignorance, right? First off, we knew we wanted one child, so we probably used the pull-out method for a total of 2 weeks before we discussed having the kid. We figured out now that it would be the perfect time, and I insisted on getting a tubal litigation after, so getting her tubes tied. So that's what I did. I don't want any more kids, and that's my choice. Boy is 4 now, and I don't regret it. Now on to the meds. I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety when I was 19 years old. I'm 40 now. It's been over 20 years. The first 3 years, I have been on a total of 10 different medications for my illness. All 10 gave me the bad side effects. I eventually gave up trying. Then years later, I met my husband, yada yada, shit happened, and I wanted to try medication again, only to find out the side effects still kicked my ass. So I never bothered with something else again because it didn't work when I was younger. Just doesn't make sense to put myself through that again. Absolutely, because repeating the same result over and over again is insanity. And there's some women out there that just take birth control so they don't have periods, which is completely silly. Your body is supposed to go through these cycles, and I understand if you have some serious sexual organ problems like endometriosis or there are other things that make it very hard for you to have a period. As understanding as I can be as a man, right? But I've been around women my entire life. Okay, so this is off r/birth control. This is posted 8 years ago. Hello, I was wondering if anyone here had any experiences taking antidepressants for birth control. I was recently placed on Prozac and Klonopin for OCD. Intake Trineza. One psychiatrist said there would be an effect, while another said no, and the pharmacist also said no. What are your experiences in this situation? Okay, so let's go down a couple of 1, 2, 3. Deleted 8 years ago. I've been on antidepressants and birth control for years. Personally, good birth control helps my anxiety. I have an intense fear of unplanned pregnancies. Birth control has hormones, and anytime you play with your hormones, you can get changes in mood. However, there's not a direct chemical interaction between the two. The side effects of one might just overlap the purpose of the other. If you mix with the chemical signals, then you're going to have some problems. No doubt in my mind, right? To think that not every doctor is a good doctor. Not every doctor is got to remember they're human too, right? And they make mistakes, and they don't always read the research. They're not always up to date. They got their own stresses. They got their own motivations. Especially if they have the medical industrial complex in their pocket, which is what often happens with the consultants and the salespeople, because especially in the States where it's for profit, with the HMOs and so forth before Obamacare came in, and then it just got even more convoluted. I don't believe this 100%. I believe that there's a correlation, and from direct observation, if it's mixed, any of this stuff, so again, of course, antidepressants and alcohol is a bad combination, and then so the three of them together, they don't say this, but actually birth control, by supposition, okay, so just amateur opinion, the longer that you use birth control, the less likely you are able to have children later in life, and the lower your fertility, because your body's so used to the progesterone that's produced in order to make your body think that it's pregnant. This is how I remember it functions, so that you can just do whatever you like. But again, the best birth control, as like a lot of Christians say, is abstinence, or just like, don't be a whore. Don't be a whore. Be more selective of your partners, and check them out first. I'm going to split this right here at the 30-minute mark before I get into the 40 minutes, so I don't have to do it later, and we'll keep going on this. All right, so here we are with my version of feminism, or equality, whatever you want. Just continue on with the birth control and hormones, anti-motherhood propaganda, right? That's another one. Here's another, and I said this before. There's women out there that have a fear of pregnancy, or have an anxiety about being raped, which obviously is legitimate. But society is as safe as you think it is, or as you feel it is. And when you put that energy wavelength out there, that's what leads to victimhood, or being taken advantage of, because that's how predators will pick up on your vulnerabilities, your emotional vulnerabilities, and your body language, and then they'll work their way into your life, and then they become inseparable. So, okay, this is again off of our birth control from 2 days ago, actually. Does anyone else have an irrational fear of pregnancy? It's so annoying. It's like I have to take my pills on time every day. I don't take any medicines that interact. My partner rarely finishes in me, and they're always in a good temperature setting. But I still get the what if, and it spirals at least every 2 months. And I do tests every month regularly, but I've not been able to this past month. I hate this, LOL. It's normal, especially in today's society. Getting pregnant is, if you don't want or can't get an abortion, is life-changing. Everything changes. You will never be the same again. Well, that was really helpful. I'm glad to live in a pro-abortion state, but it's still super scary though, as a broke college student, 2 lines on a test would literally send me into a panic mode. Going further, I've had the same fear when I was on the pill. If it helps you to feel any better, I was on it for 13 years and no pregnancies. Now I have my tubes removed. Daughter Judy, yep, I got my tubes removed as part of that fear. I have pictures to prove it. I'm glad you found a solution. I do not want children, but like 10 years from now, it's so hormonal, because it is. Me too. I'm getting my tubes removed for this reason. I can't wait for the relief of having no more fear over sex. Yeah, because I got pregnant before, so I know how it feels. Unfortunately, I miscarried. But the thought of me creating a life isn't on my mind right now. So I understand your worries, and I think we all do. So remember, you're not alone. Okay. This is, again, it's very, propaganda works on women and children first. And, I have to forgive these women for not wanting to. Curly Nerdy Bry 1994. Rah-rahs. I live in America, so yeah, pregnancy terrifies me since I can be thrown in jail if something happens. Another account 17 hours ago. Same. Honestly, being raised Catholic, not only by parents, but also school, it's so toxic sometimes, especially as a woman. Sure, it shaped me by giving me a good head on my shoulders with good morals, and I'm still a believer, but shit, it's 2023, and you are not going to hell if you have sex outside of marriage. You're certainly not going to hell if you have a baby before marriage. I'm a good girl, kept my legs closed and lips shut tight all throughout high school, till I finally got together with my boyfriend for 2 years. Even then, we waited about 7 months, which is right on my 23rd birthday. had a romantic getaway, and finally had sex, and it was amazing. And now we have almost every weekend. Well, good for you. I don't even regret it, and I couldn't picture it differently. But having been taught a certain way for so damn long, it took me months to basically tell my old self to fuck off and get in this new life now. I even had to again teach myself how pregnancy works in the real world, because apparently babies don't come from storks. Yeah, I can understand, some of the shame, because traditionally that's how some Catholic churches or congregations, the negativity, that's more Bible thumper mentality. So I don't really share that. But reading this is really depressing, because as I said, from Pieces of a Woman when I did that video, you shouldn't be afraid of it. You shouldn't. And I'm not envious of, really not, of of pregnancy or that ability. I have my body. I love it for what it is. It takes two to tango. You need a man to have a child, and so on and so forth. And I will be very happy when this happens for me, with my woman. But just this is so frustrating and depressing. Again, okay, if you don't want to have kids, fine, whatever. Don't get into a relationship, and don't waste the man's time. Just don't. Great. And like these fears and anxieties are how you're preyed upon. Again, how I said before, the medical industrial complex with the drug culture, pharmaceuticals, and this is how you get hijacked, right? Your behavior changes, and then after a long period of time, so then that can exacerbate body image issues or suicidal tendencies. And if you're not educated and your doctor's not observing you, or doesn't have there's not enough resources to keep the observation going, then things are a problem. Yep, the thought of being pregnant terrifies me, and the thought of childbirth is beyond terrifying to me. Fuck that, no thanks. I felt, yes, unending torture. I do have a fear, but it's definitely not irrational. It is alarmingly easy to get pregnant. I live in fear of it every day. I feel the same way. I have so much anxiety around sex for this and other reasons. The reasons, but I don't want to get into it right now. That I just don't have sex. I don't want biological kids ever. And I don't want to be pregnant ever. So I'll eventually get my tubes out. And if I meet someone that I trust, I want to have sex with. Bullet razor. I felt that way until I was sterilized. Same here. I only use condoms. I can ever become so panicked that I can no longer eat and sleep well. The annoying thing is that nobody around me understands this fear and even laughs when I says this. Honestly, in my opinion, there's nothing more beautiful than a pregnant woman. I've been around, condoms are okay. They're the safest and cheapest way to deal with it. Personally, I don't like them, and my preference would be for timing, but in a committed and consenting relationship, timing the cycles is probably the best. Because the fertility rates are dropping, and this is kind of terrifying. It's leading to it could lead to population collapse, and the trend is already as it is that the population in North America is declining, and other developed nations, because as with the increase of intelligence, there's a correlation to an increase in mental health conditions, with the anxiety and depression and so on and so forth, existentialism, and mental masturbation, and again, being hijacked by propaganda, believing in something that you think is going to help you, but then long term it doesn't. It's corruption. Okay, so then moving on, one of the other methods, IUD, I don't recommend them. I was recently around a woman that had one, and it was causing her a lot of trouble. You imagine, I would not want something like that inside of me, in my vast deference. Like, no thanks, Pull-out method, no. Again, it's just something you would have to keep an eye on. That there's a fella here whose father was in London, rather, whose father was involved with the creation of the birth control pill as part of the team, and he's involved with philanthropy and some local community and charity organizations. Is obviously, after a while, like you imagine all the children that were not born. Family planning is better. Information and accountability, right? Those information and personal accountability, right? You have to be careful and understand what you're doing and who you're doing it with, because what head do you want to listen to? In my case, I've listened to this one more often than what's between my legs, because as a contractor and being all over the place, as all the women that I've ever been close to or tried to interact with and show my affection for, it's just like, how long am I gonna be here? When am I gonna leave? How is that fair to them? How's that fair to me? Very, very isolating and stressful, and then mixed with the if I'm going to complain more or to highlight more issues, mix this with dating applications and playing into the worst behaviors of female nature and of male nature, to be honest with you, with hypergamy and the illusion of choice, and that there's always something better out there, which leads to more promiscuity, and more promiscuity leads to a decline in interpersonal trust, and societal understanding. So, like the social contract, as the old people would call it, the common sense. So, okay, so I'm going to summarize this. Okay, so anti-motherhood propaganda, right, supported by the medical industrial complex, the DSM change from DSM-4 to DSM-5, and there being a lot more room for interpretation, and a lot of definitions were changed. I don't know everything about it, but that's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. Let's see, the prey upon emotional and mental conditions of young women in order to sell them and put them onto birth control and antidepressants instead of dealing with the underlying issues. And then lastly, this would lead into abortion propaganda, and a lack of accountability and promiscuity, and an insult to your intelligence if you're watching this as a woman, and an insult to the man as well in any kind of committed relationship, because a good man will want to be a father. He will, right? You just have to talk to him about it and get rid of the anxiety over becoming a mother, right? because creation is divine, right? If I'm going to go by my religious context and my beliefs, focus on the family, right? Because the family unit is, in my eyes and in my heart, what makes life worthwhile. So, again, considering this is Women's Day, or not Women's Day, this is Women's History Month. You can have your opinion, and you do what you want with your body, but remember, it takes two to tango. The man has to be involved in your life, if that's, and vice versa. That's the whole point of the relationship. So get past the propaganda, forgive yourself for falling for it, and let's move on. Dang it. Focus, you fuck.